Bonjour à tout le monde. Hello to everyone and welcome to the Alliance Française of Chicago. I am Mary Ellen Cannellan, the Executive Director, and today, as you know, we are celebrating France's national holiday. Now, before we begin, we have just a couple of ground rules. I will ask that you all mute, that you stay on mute to make this easy to do, and I'm sure a lot of you already have experience with that. And I want to direct you to the chat function. It's at the bottom of your screen on that ribbon where you see chat sort of in the middle of the bottom of your screen. We'd love it if you would, during the course of this, let us know who you are and where you are. And also you can use that function for any questions that you might have. So I hope everybody kind of, maybe you nod and let me know you've got it, you know what we're doing. Okay, fantastic, you're a wonderful group. So getting back to the French national holiday, we have the 4th of July, right? In the States in any case, and they have the 14 juillet, the 14th of July, la fête de la Bastille, la fête nationale. Now in the past in Chicago, we have always celebrated Bastille Day together with the French and American communities. But this year, as you know, it's a little different. And this is why. We are going live to Paris with Oliver G., the Australian journalist who has taken it by storm. Oliver just recently published a highly entertaining book, Paris on Air, and it's based on his award-winning travel podcast. Thank you for showing the book. I have it. I love that. Well done, Madame Suzette. Well done. And so it's based on that. It's his version of Paris. And I think you're going to love it. You know, at times it is absolutely hilarious. We can totally relate to that. At other times, it's very touching, it's thought-provoking, but at all times, it is utterly original. Now, he's going to tell us more about his work in just a moment or two, and a lot about what's going on in Paris for the Fête Nationale. But I need 1 minute to make sure that you are all aware of our Bastille Day membership special. Until midnight tonight, for all new members only, we are offering membership at a 50% discount. And membership at the Alliance Française of Chicago gives you discounts on our classes, both online and on site. It gives you discounts on all of our cultural programs and a very special access to the online library that is given by the Institut Français, where you can access the graphic novels the French love so much, magazines like Paris Match, award-winning novels that have received the Prix Goncourt, audiobooks, etc. We have it all. And so do please support us, think of us, and become part of our grande famille. So without further ado, we are off to Paris with Oliver G. Take it away, Oliver.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Mary Ellen. And yes, I'm very glad to be here in Chicago. It's cool to see so many people's names saying that they're in Chicago, because this is the one city that I was especially excited to visit on the real tour that unfortunately didn't happen. But before we do anything, I need to ask everyone's permission. Is it okay with you if I have a celebratory glass of champagne? Can I get some thumbs up? And yeah, okay, about half. Another half are just sort of smiling a little bit. Yep, there you go. Okay, there's this, yep, someone's cheersing. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna do it. I figured it's the National Celebration Day. But what we're gonna do today is very different to all the other Zooms I've done on this tour. Oh, I see an actual thumbs up from Jim and Cindy, I believe there. Thank you. What we're going to do today that's going to be a little bit different is the guys at Alliance Française de Chicago have said I can have a bit of free reign to just chat with you guys rather than a traditional interview. So things are already going a little bit... Things are already going off to a good start, I think. So I know it's 1 o'clock for you guys, but for me it's 8 in the evening. And I think that warrants a little glass of champagne to celebrate the national day. So let's make it a medium-sized glass, right? Cheers, and thank you very much for joining me. Some people holding up, what is that, tea, coffee? Tea and coffee? Yeah, okay. So what we'll do is I'm going to talk to you for around the next half an hour about, I see some empty glasses there too, about Bastille Day, what's happening today, which is quite easy for me to explain because I've been right in the thick of everything, and then sort of finish up by talking a little bit about my book and the podcast, that kind of stuff. All the way through it, I'm going to be watching the chat so I can see it. I see right now the most recent comment says it's Agatha in Cleveland. I'm going to be right there ready to answer you. So if you got questions, send them through. But before I say anything, I know what everyone's question is because I get it sent so many times. I don't know when Americans can come to Paris. You have to wear a mask. I know, bad news. You have to wear a mask when you're in shops and museums here. A lot of the pictures I share, people aren't wearing masks or seemingly social distancing. It's because things are a lot better after a very strict lockdown. Apparently the second strictest in all of Europe was in Paris. So things seem to be a lot better here than in a lot of places around the world. But yeah, they're the questions I keep getting sent. So I tackled them first. Let's talk Bastille Day, where I'm sitting and where I am in Paris before we go on. But before anything, just to get a sense of who I'm looking at, and I am looking at everyone, if you know already who I am and sort of listen to the podcast or have read the book, do like a wave so I know how many people. Okay, it's kind of about, it feels like about half there. All right, I see. And about half the people don't have videos on. Okay, salut Viviana. Okay, so I'll talk about who I am afterwards. What we'll start with is where I am and what the view from my balcony looks like, because I think you guys will all like that. But I'm sitting in a beautiful apartment, stunningly beautiful apartment that I don't actually live in. I'm just staying here for a couple of weeks. It's run by a company called Paris Perfect. And because there are no tourists in the city at the moment, at least no tourists from Australia and America and so on, all the apartments they run are sitting empty, and they just invited us over here. And they said, hey, they were really cool about it. They said, hey, if you want to, no, they said, we'd like to see what you can do in the 7th district, which is where I am. And they just gave us the keys to it. So that's why I'm sitting here. It's totally beautiful. And we're on a street called Rue, I believe it's Rue de Montessuie. It could be Rue Montessuie. I'm not sure if there's a de in it. I feel like there is. Why it's special is because I'm about 100 yards from the Eiffel Tower, which I'm going to show you in a second. The second reason why this apartment is special, besides being lovely, is I don't know why, but it's right on the border of where the police have set up a fencing situation to stop people from getting to the Eiffel Tower for tonight's fireworks, which I'll show you as well. But we'll start with the view, and then I'll show you the police, because they're right downstairs. But look, let's start off with this. So here's the view. Are you ready? I'm going to dangle the laptop over the edge here. Can you see? Do a little wave or something so that I can see. Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's obviously the Eiffel Tower. There it is. It's Rue de Montessuie, as I guessed. And here are all the. They're not police actually. They're like security. Can you see? Leading right to my door. And I've been watching. Oh, that could have been the end of the Zoom chat pretty quickly there. And I've been watching all afternoon as people have tried to get up there to see the fireworks, but been refused. You have to have proof of address. So if we had happened to have lived on the other side of that barricade, they wouldn't have let us in because we're just essentially temporary residents. I forgot the most important thing. Cheers, everybody, and thanks for spending your afternoon with me. Ooh, that's some good stuff. All right, so Bastille Day. Let's talk a little bit about that. As I said, oh, show the red scooter. Suzette, of course. I can't. Hang on, I'll try. I'm going to be all over these comments because it's more fun when it's interactive. Let's see if you can see the scooter. Oh, you can't quite, but where those people are standing, the group of people down there is where it's parked. Usually, it's parked right there where the police are or the security, but you can guess why I didn't park it there today. Because they were there. In one of these Zooms, someone asked me where the safest place is to park a scooter in Paris. I said the answer is where you can see it. So that's what I try and do, because you never know when it's going to be taken off down the hill, as it happened to me recently in Montmartre, as Catherine has been referring to there, and I chased him down. But anyway, Bastille Day, what is it? I said to the lovely staff here at Alliance Française de Chicago that anyone can look at Wikipedia and read up on the history of Bastille Day, but so there's not really any point in me doing it, but in 10 seconds, it's the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille prison, which started the French Revolution many hundreds of years ago, but it wasn't the national day until about, I think it was 80 or 90 years later. And now it's the fête, as Mary Ellen said, it's the national day for France, which means a lot of celebrations and fireworks and so on. But today it's quite different. Who watching already knows what's happening in France and has been watching the news and all that stuff? Who has no idea? Who knows? Who knows? Not many of you. No, some of you. Okay. So what? David knows. Amy knows. Yeah. Okay. So what happens usually is they have this huge parade down the Champs-Élysées. They have a huge fireworks display right on the top of the Eiffel Tower. Everyone gathers on the Champ de Mars, the big park. I love your background, Margaret. That's beautiful. Is that Giverny? Wow. Today, very different. So what's happening, obviously, because of all the pandemic and everything's changing all over the world, really, but especially in France still, they canned the parade down the Champs-Élysées. They just focused on the Concorde, the Place de la Concorde, which is where Macron and 2,000 other people were, including soldiers doing the march, the marching band, that kind of stuff. They did the flyover with all the planes going down the Champs-Élysées and over the... In fact, they streamed it live on TV and I watched it, which was way better than watching it in person because they have all the different camera angles. And you can see the... so you guys who are, you know, living vicariously through the TV and wishing you were in Paris, this was actually better on TV because they had aerial shots of Paris from low-flying planes, which is pretty stunning. You know, it's not an angle that you see. And all the channels were trying to outdo each other, which I thought I was flicking between them to see if there was any difference. And there was one of them, can't remember what channel it was, TF1, I think. They had a journalist in the back of one of those army planes that has the bottom open where they jump out to parachute, you know, the soldiers jump out. And he was tired and standing there going, and we're crossing over the Seine River, if you get, you know, like that kind of thing. I found it to be extremely entertaining. So maybe you can find that stuff on YouTube afterwards. But if you're anything like me, you'll enjoy seeing the replays because it was a really cool way to see the city. So all those planes flew straight down Champs-Élysées. The president was there at the Place de la Concorde, half as many people as there usually would be, half as many soldiers, and they dedicated it rather to the soldiers or to France, whatever they usually would do, to the health workers. And there was representatives from a few different countries who took in French patients during this pandemic. They were on hand and they were sort of praised by the president. So that was how it was different. But tonight, how it's going to be different and how it's already affecting me and others is they've done an extremely large scale closing down of parts around Paris where you could usually see the fireworks. So typically everyone would go to the Champ de Mars or the Champ de Mars if you are still learning French perhaps. Totally closed. You can't even get close to it. And gradually throughout the day, they're pushing those barricades further back. So you can't even get within several streets of it. It's annoying because tonight I was meant to be going to a party that's on Avenue de la Bourdonnais, which is right by where the Eiffel Tower is. And I don't think I'll be able to get to it because they won't let you go through for anything. They're being extremely strict. And that's just for pedestrian traffic. It's about 3 blocks back, they won't let cars go through. So they've really taken it seriously. They don't want any kind of social gathering whatsoever. And as I understand, around France, they've cancelled a lot of other events too. So it's going to be a really different Bastille Day, but hopefully I'll be able to watch the fireworks from this balcony. The view was all right. I don't know what direction the fireworks will be shooting. So I'll probably do a live stream. But that's, I see a question from Jim McPherson. That's about the scale of it for the Bastille Day today. Ask me questions about Bastille Day and I'll answer them before getting on to a bit about me in the book. But Jim McPherson wonders if the Pompiers are doing anything tonight. And the answer is probably not much. they're meant to have the ball, the fireman's ball, which is like a pretty wonderful and wild party inside the actual fire stations, like a pretty rowdy party at some. I went to one in the Marais once by accident, and I thought I'd landed in I didn't even know what I'd landed in. It was totally wild, nothing like what I expected, like a proper like rave discotheque. But they canceled all those, and that makes sense because they don't want anyone to get close to each other. And the one that I was at, it was like being at a Metallica concert. I've never been to a Metallica concert, but that's how I imagine. But there you go. My friend, says Sarah, or Sarah, lives in Biarritz and everything was cancelled. Yep, that's about right. It seems to be par for the course in France at the moment. They're not taking any risks, which is part of how they dealt with it so well. I think the top amount of people they can have gathering in any one place is 5,000, but they don't. I think it's been the same in a lot of the other countries when people mix alcohol with evenings out. All social distancing tends to go out the window, doesn't it? So it's going to be a pretty subdued one. And even for us, we were meant to be going to another Paris Perfect apartment with this woman, Leah Walker, who is in this really beautiful apartment. I just don't think we'll be able to get there. So Lena and I might just end up having our planned party tonight by ourselves. So there you go. Gloria, I attended the Bal de Pompiers in Paris 6 years ago in the Latin Quarter, the Roman amphitheater area. It was great. They actually had an American band. Should be Bal, not Ball. Yeah, I got you there. That sounds really cool. I think it'd be really fun to go to all the different Pompiers. It sounds weird to say it in English, doesn't it? The fireman's balls. You can't really say that, but it would be quite fun to go to all the different ones. As for celebratory dinner, Carol, I don't quite know what we're going to do. We went and bought champagne and stuff thinking that maybe we could have friends over here, but I don't think friends will be able to get here either. And I was kind of counting on them to bring food. So tonight's going to be something of a washout for us. But if you guys know me at all, as I realize some of you do, I'll probably try and make the most of it with some kind of positive spin. But yeah, champagne will do for dinner. Now, the last question for a second is from David. What is Paris like without American tourists everywhere? It's not just American tourists. It's a lot of other tourists you see here. Like, for example, especially around the Eiffel Tower, you get a lot of Chinese tourists doing, and in the department stores, a lot of Chinese people doing their wedding, usually with a lot of pomp and circumstance. And they'll have a lot of people, a lot of photos, photographers, and they're all away too at the moment. So it's kind of weird. But I did a podcast episode about this yesterday. It's kind of weird, but selfishly and personally, it's been really interesting because it's really simple for us to get into. Like, I went past the Louvre today. I walked past the Louvre Museum on a day off, like the perfect day to visit it. And you know, there's the big winding, I don't know what you call them, barriers out the front that you got to line up to get in. There was literally no one there. Literally not a single person. So Lena and I, as we walked past it, we're like, should we go in just for the sake of it? And we didn't, but we will do it any day now, because that getting into the Louvre when there's not many people is already spectacular by itself. But I think I keep saying it's like kind of historic times for Paris, being able to go into the department stores or the cafes or the museums without anybody in it. So it's very clear there are no tourists here. But there are a lot of people who are obviously desperately missing tourists, American tourists, Australian tourists, because Paris thrives on tourism. But there are other people like Parisians who are I talked to the mayor of Montmartre the other day who went up the Eiffel Tower with his children for the first time in a long time because it was so easy to do. So it's kind of this, I don't know, double-edged sword. On the one hand, he was enjoying it, but he wanted to promote it so that tourists could think to come. So it's kind of weird. But I like it, and also I feel sorry for everyone who can't be here. It's a bit of a weird one for me. I wish you guys were all here at the very least. Now, I'll answer one more before I go on to talk about the podcast and the book. But David says, any recent news about Montmartre, Pigalle, and whether businesses there are open or closed? A lot of it is open. I think if you guys walked around Paris today, besides the fact that people are wearing masks and the terraces are spilling out onto the street, which is quite unusual, you wouldn't really notice that anything had happened. It almost feels back to normal here. So yeah, most businesses are open. It's rare to find something that's closed, and I will enjoy it while it lasts. Bob, And Amy, my favorite snack food to go with champagne, small bits of cheese, I think. Does that work? I love cheese. I love French cheese. Oh my goodness. But I have nothing with me except Lena just put some chips here, some crisps. What do you call it in America? Chips? Crisps? Crisps? Chips, I bet. But I'm not going to eat it because then I'll be eating while I'm talking. That's just disgraceful. Now, I want to talk about this book that I've written because I realized, hang on, who's already got the book? Give me some kind of wave. Oh, yeah, okay, so a third of you. Suzette's holding it. I can do that too, Suzette. So this, nice one. This, I realized the people who've read it might enjoy hearing this as well. So I'll talk to everybody at the same kind of level here. I wrote a book. I self-published it, which is a pretty risky thing to do, but a fellow writer in Paris, David Downey, his name is, he's wonderful. He told me if he had, I love the quote, he says, if he had the moxie, the mettle, and the gumption to self-publish, he would always do it. And I thought if a great writer like him is self-publishing, wants to self-publish, and if I'm a guy that has gumption, whatever that might be, I figured I'd do it. So I took a bit of a risk and I did it, and the listeners to the show came through, and it's been a success, so much so that it's going into a second printing. As we speak, they're printing it. And the book, I don't know, the book is about, it's a lot about Paris. Mary Ellen does a thumbs up because she told me that it was laugh out loud funny before. See, thumbs up. That's the idea. It's meant to be an entertaining book about Paris. My wife did that drawing as well. That's me. Entertaining, fun, quite light, few pictures, and I think you'll enjoy it if you like Paris. So what I figured is I do these Zoom chats going around America rather than doing the tour that I was meant to be doing, and use that as a way to promote the book, but also to get new listeners to the podcast. So if you're thinking, good try, Oliver, I'm not going to get your book, that's fine, but I'd love it if you did that little subscribe button on the podcast, which is free to do and helps. And how does it help? Well, when I eventually go and knock on President Macron's door and say, hey, I'd like to interview you, and he says, how many listeners does your show have? When I can say 1 million a month, he'll say, yeah, let's do the interview. And at the moment, I'd have to say 70,000 a month. And he'd say, I don't give a hoot, mate. Come back when it's 1 million. So that's why I always try and promote people to subscribe to it. But as for the book, what I'm going to do with this one is I've already organized to send it around the world because I wanted to make it cheaper for postage was the main reason. So I'm sending it to Canada, I'm sending it to Australia, Paris, and the various cities dotted around in the States. And one of those is Chicago. In fact, Jim and Cindy and what looks like a cat or could be a dog, it's definitely a dog, they're taking about 100 copies of them. So it's going to be quite easy for you guys who haven't got it, who might be interested in getting it, to buy a copy that'll either be shipped from them. I say shipped, I guess it would be driven. I don't know. So they'll be able to do it really simply, or maybe we could do it in a way that you pick it up from somewhere. So I'm sharing the links as we speak. The first one there is the pre-order link. It'll be ready real quick. The second link is the combo, which I just made the other day, and it's a way to get the audio. You heard of audio books, right? Lame, I'm afraid to say. This is an audio. In fact, I call it an audio experience, but I talked with the Alliance Française de Hawaii, I guess you'd say in French, Hawaii. The other day I did a chat with them, and the guy had listened to it and he loved it. And he said I should call it the audio performance because it has voices of about 20 different characters from the book, or people acting out the characters, and music and all this. So there you go. There's 2 links there. I think you could get the second one if you want the full experience, or the first one. But there you go. I'm trying to keep it quick and keep an eye on the time, but I'm happy to answer questions as well about the book. Anything you want to know. I've done about 20 Zooms now with people around the States, with cities around the States. So I feel like I heard all the questions. So if you ask me anything, I'll be happy to answer it. But Amy again says, do I hang out at Shakespeare and Co? Well, I do, but I've been hanging out there recently to bring them copies. It's thanks to them that it's sold out. I brought in over 150 copies over 2 weeks, and they said it was the best seller during the lockdown and deconfinement period. So we'll all raise a champagne to that. I know I will anyway. People holding empty cups there, isn't that bad luck? Saying there's no questions, but Romaine says, can I read a little bit from it? Yeah, sure. I'll read a little bit from it. I'll read the first page. How about that while you guys give me some questions? Usually I'd get Lena, but she walked out of the room, but she has lines in this too, so I'll have to do her voice. Usually I'd do the first small chapter, but I realized that time's getting away. So just the first page, set you in the scene. And incidentally, it's the proposal scene, how I proposed to my wife. And incidentally, we were walking along the same bridge today. But here's a little taste so you know what you're getting into. Introduction. The ring weighed heavy in my pocket as we stepped into the cold Paris night. And it wasn't heavy because it was big. It definitely wasn't big. It was more heavy in the sense that I felt the crushing pressure from my imminent proposal. We were leaving a left bank party and were set to walk to Hemingway's bar in the Ritz. My plan was to stop on a bridge somewhere along the Seine River, to ask her to marry me, then to continue to the hotel bar. I double-checked the directions discreetly. A 20-minute walk, fairly straightforward. But as we stepped out into the crisp evening air on Rue de l'Odéon, a light rain began to fall. There's a dog barking in the background. Let's grab a cab, she said. Oh, I was meant to do her accent. Let's grab a cab, she's Swedish. She said, a cab? No, we have to walk. I thought, I can't propose to her in a taxi, can I? We don't need a taxi. Paris is beautiful when it rains, I responded. I can't even walk. My shoes are too small, she pleaded. Can't we grab a cab? I hope she can't hear me from the other room. She can hear me. And it's awful. Oh, what a horrible thing to say. You're Swiss, right? She's Swedish. I'm going to be in trouble tonight. Should I throw it all in? Postpone the proposal? No, the timing is perfect. Don't be silly. We'll never find a cab, I lied. And the Ritz is a short walk anyway, I lied again. But I'm not going to read any more. I think if you enjoyed that page, you'd probably enjoy the whole book. And now I'm happy to answer questions about the podcast, about the book, about anything, or I'll say anything you want. If there are no questions, it's clear to us all in this Zoom chat that we're not having much fun, and I'll cut it short and let you all go about your day. But while I'm waiting for the questions to come in, I'm going to put a link that I plan to share with you guys before from a recent podcast episode I did about the French Revolution. There's a guy who has another podcast called Revolutions. He's a history buff, and I had him on where I was the idiot, and I asked him to give me the idiot's guide to the French Revolution. So if you're wondering what this Bastille is all about, that's a really good sort of dipping your toe into the Eiffel Tower world that will hopefully lead you down a rabbit hole into doing what some other people have done and listened to 200 episodes. There's more hours of the Eiffel Tower podcast than hours of Seinfeld episodes, so strap in tight if you're going to get on that ride. I'll be honest though, it's not as good as Seinfeld, don't worry. I'm not going to compare myself to that show. Now, here are the questions. Jim McPherson, do you really believe there is a crocodile in the canal? And the answer is a resounding yes, I actually do. Jim's referring to the book. In the book that I wrote, there's a story of a woman who released 2 crocodiles into the canal. And after finding that catfish, do you guys see the picture of the catfish? I'm going to show you my Instagram picture of it. The biggest, it's tough because that picture, it's hard to see how big. Can you tell how big that fish is? That's just its head, and I know fish don't have shoulders, but his head and shoulders, but it must have been at least 6 feet. And so I thought, if that exists, why wouldn't a crocodile survive? And you know what else? I'm going to do a Chicago exclusive for a plan I have. You know, I started writing the 2nd book by popular demand. And I had this idea that's a bit crazy, but a lot of people say that one of their favorite parts of the book, the first book, is the honeymoon chapter, which is where Lena and I took the little red scooter around the entirety of France. And I mean the entirety of France. It was 3,000 miles. Is that right? 3,000. I usually say kilometers, but I think it's 3,000 miles at 30 miles an hour. And we stopped in all the small villages. Chapter 8 in the book, everybody really liked that one. I thought, this next book needs adventure. What can I do? And my idea, nothing is set in stone, but this is the idea at the moment, is to invest in an old wooden boat and sail, or not sail, but I guess chug from Paris to the sea, to Le Havre or what's the other one? Honfleur on the west side. So that will be my adventure. Maybe this summer, maybe next summer. You guys heard it first. No one else knows that. Yeah, that's my idea. And I forgot to say, while I was showing that Instagram picture, at the Eiffel Tower on Instagram, free to follow. I don't know. I think it's a fun thing to follow. I'll put the link there too. I came prepared with links for this one. There's the link. You guys can all hit that follow button. Now I'm going to look through these questions. Favorite luncheon spot in Paris, says David. I don't know. I really like the new kind of wave of cafes that are a little bit, where all the Australians and stuff run them. The famous places like the bistros on the side of the road, like the one that you maybe saw. The food can be quite disgusting, I'm learning, and expensive. Whereas the ones with, maybe it's a personal thing, but the ones where like the Australians run or the Americans run, I think they all want to be on the podcast now. So I think they treat me really well as well. So when I go in there, they can be quite nice and it's a really lovely experience. Plus we get good podcast guests. So I don't know. Plus they speak great English, which can be handy. So those kind of ones, like Khartoum the other day, I went for brunch. It was delicious. Amy wants to hear the story about the intellectual bookstore. I'll do the short version because it was on yesterday's podcast, but he took one look at my book. I love French people, but this guy was French and he said, why should we stock your book? Who are you? Are you some kind of artist? And I said, well, no, I'm just Oliver. I have a podcast. He goes, well, who is this Olivier G? I said, well, that's me. I got, you're making it hard for me. The book's pretty, I promise you the book is good. Like, at least give it a chance. And he looked at the back, or his colleague looked at the back, and at the top, it says, one of our greatest Parisian voices by Caroline de Maigret, which is a supermodel. And right next to them where they were sitting, they had the best-selling English books. And her book was #1. So that he kind of looked at me and then he looked at that and then he sort of resentfully looked at me again. And then he asked me where I've been selling it. I said, Shakespeare and Company. I said, Shakespeare and Company took 6 to begin with. And this guy goes, okay, we'll take 10. And that is the short version of the story. The long version goes on a little bit longer, but I'm not going to name who they are either, but at least they're taking 10 of the books. Now, more questions. What's my favorite street in Paris? Easy. It's Rue des Abbesses, followed by Rue Montorgueil. And my favorite museum, SJ van der Meulen. Favorite museum's got to be Musée d'Orsay or maybe the Louvre. The Louvre is just so good. Sarah, what's the first place we should go when they let us back to Paris? Something new in the past year or so. I think you should go to maybe like a new museum exhibition, especially if you get here quickly before all the other tourists get here, or a new, or go like where they're pedestrianizing the street. That's really cool at the moment. They're getting rid of the traffic and you'll see a whole new Paris. I promise you, there's so many streets. Get a bicycle and go down Rue Rivoli. Do that. There you go. I enjoyed the Pan Am Brewery when I was there last summer. Have you been there? Near the canals, it has a great local vibe. Oh, Pamela Erickson, you mustn't follow me on Instagram. I was there 2 nights ago saying it's my favorite bar in Paris. But it seems like we have similar tastes, so maybe I'll see you one day there, Pamela. In fact, the guy that runs it has been on my show, and he did the catering for an event in chapter 9 of the book. You guys who've read it will know what I'm talking about. The best event I've ever been involved in. Best Eiffel Tower view you'll ever see. Now, favorite restaurant, says Amy. Amy, you're commenting a lot. I love it. Favorite restaurant. I'm becoming a big fan of Robert De Niro's favorite restaurant, which is the Fontaine de Mars, which is around the corner. Apparently he hangs out there a lot. And I always ask the waiters about him and they always say that he's there all the time. I don't know if I believe it. That's not a question. I'll skip it. What surprised you the most about Paris and Parisians when you moved to France from Australia? Agatha. You haven't read the book. That is in chapter 1, and I moved there from Sweden, so it was even more of a time portal through from modern times to old Paris. So the things that surprised me were how everything didn't seem to work, which I took with a grain of salt. My approach has always been to go in there laughing already and expecting failure, as I talked about in the book. But also small things, like in Paris at the airport, when I first arrived, they had phone booths, like the old-fashioned. Maybe you still got them in Chicago, I don't know. Do you? Nod? Shake? No. Yeah, so when I moved to Paris 5 years ago, I saw these phone booths. I was like, wow, this is like prehistoric compared to Sweden, which everything is whatever the opposite of prehistoric is. So it was like I went back 30 years or something. Romaine, can you give us a synopsis of the book? Tough customer, Romaine, I love it. Here we go. I'll read the back, it's the easiest way. A fresh voice on the Paris scene, it says. Oliver shares the soaring highs and crushing lows that come with following your dreams to the French capital and managing against the odds to stay there. He befriends the city's too cool for school basketballers. That's a good bit. Mon mec, oh gosh, read the book, that'll make you laugh. Did that make you laugh, Mary Ellen? Yeah, there you go. Jim, you like that bit? Yeah. Who else had read it? Who? Amy, you like that? Jared? Yeah, good bit. Yeah, that was a general consensus. He chases runaway crocodiles. We've talked about that bit already. And takes his bride on a mammoth honeymoon trip around France on his little red scooter. It's a fresh perspective on the city of light and the characters that make it shine. It's kind of me figuring it out, telling funny stories. Like I rented a chateau for my 30th birthday, and that turned into a wild kind of party. You know, I had run-ins with bankers and needed to have, you know, I learned French, all these things that happened while interweaving a love story with my wife who I married, which the story that's also in. But if that doesn't sell it to you, Romaine, then nothing will. I don't think I'll ever succeed. Where is Romaine? Oh, there you are. Thumbs up. I also saw some notifications that people have bought the book as we're talking. Is that someone here that bought it? Anyone putting their thumbs up? Oh, yeah. Eric. That's very kind of you, Eric. Thanks so much. How wonderful. Now, best thing about tourists and the most annoying thing, says Jared. The best thing is the tourists make this city function. It's quite clear. Plus, I love, I write about in the book, I love seeing tourists walk around Montmartre staring with love for the city because I share that love. So when I see people so happy, it makes me happy rather than getting irritated that I have to sidestep them. I actually quite like it. I'm like a tourist myself walking around. The most annoying thing, should I say an annoying thing about Americans, or does that risk alienating me from all the people in this room, 45 people? Well, this is a gamble. No, I'll tell you, I think it's something that Americans know too, and Australians can be the same, but Americans and Australians, I'm Australian, tend to talk louder than Parisians. So it can be quite easy to spot an American by that. And I think you Americans who've been to Paris know that already, and probably same as me, actually. Think about it if you're sitting in a quiet cafe. But some Americans don't, and that maybe is the most annoying thing. But for the most part, did I get away with that? What do you reckon? Amy? Yeah, I think I got away with it. Look, I'm honest. I'm an honest podcaster. Bob Huffman, I enjoyed your YouTube interview tour with Eric, the mayor of Montmartre, although it cut off before the end. That was really annoying after half an hour. That's the thing I should, for you guys who don't know, I invented something. I call it a walk show. It's like a talk show crossed with walking. And I do it with a stabilizer, a live stream. And I get really cool guests like the mayor of Montmartre to show me around town. And we do that just like this, but I'll be walking and people will say, like Bob did, here's a question. I'll say, hey, Mr. Mayor, Monsieur le Maire, what's the deal with this? And we did this great walk on Rue des Abbesses and beyond. And then when we cut between the two churches at the very top, it cut out, never to be resumed. And I think I found it's an internet dead spot, and there are a few of them in Paris. But thankfully, that doesn't happen very often. Amy, is it true they have Saline Cinema on the Seine right now? No. And I've seen a lot of people, including Elaine Shalina, who wrote a book about the Seine, promoting it as such. It's not on the Seine, it's on the Bassin de la Villette, I think, or at least the Canal de l'Ourcq. Do you pronounce the Q at the end, or is it Canal de l'Ourcq? Yeah. And it's just for one night, and you have to enter a lotto to win a ticket. So the chances of winning are very low, but I probably will still enter it anyway. But it's going to be like a drive-in cinema, but you sit in a boat. And I did hire those boats the other day. I went for a canal cruise, which is probably what prompted this idea of cruising down the Seine, which is an absolutely crazy idea. Like, when I ask people how long they think it'll take, people have the most wildly differing guesses. In fact, everyone can think in your head how long you think it'll take me to take a boat from Paris to the sea in the north. Think it in your head, think it, and I'll tell you what an expert told me, and you have to nod if you think you were close, okay? He said it would take 2 weeks. We're getting a nod there. 3 weeks from Jim. Robert was doing that, which I actually think means you guessed 10 weeks, to be honest. But I've heard everything from like 3 months to 3 days. So It's 120 miles as the crow flies, or 260 miles like this, because the Seine goes like this. And the plan is to park it or dock it or moor it, whatever you say, and check out the villages along the way. These are villages that are 2,000 years old. They've been there since the Roman times. Giverny, Rouen, these kind of places. I think that's something to look forward to. Some of you guys who've been around for a while, like Jim and Cindy, what do you think? Good idea? Excited about that? Thumbs up. Okay, good, good, good. What else have we got here? What's your favorite spot in France that's not Paris? Says Margaret, or Margari, perhaps. My favorite spot is probably Annecy in the southeast in the Alps, which I went to on our honeymoon trip and was totally charmed by. Amy loves Lena's watercolors. So do I, at Parisian Postcards on Instagram. Noemi says, programs like this are made possible by your generous support. So support your Alliance Française before you do anything else, because I'm also very grateful to be here talking to you. Get in on that membership offer that they had. That sounded pretty good. What was it, $55 instead of 100? Woo-wee, I'm tempted to do it. There's a noisy dog out there. No, please do it. Yes, and Karen saw my walk with Ernest Hemingway. How about that? You guys who are new around here probably wonder what the heck that's all about. I started a new potential series where, and it's not because I think I've interviewed everyone that's living in Paris, but I started interviewing the dead by crazy coincidence. They visit me in dreams and tell me to meet them, like Ernest Hemingway did last week. And I met him at midnight on the same steps that Midnight in Paris was filmed. And we went for a stroll around the left bank. Can someone link that on YouTube? That'd be really nice. But check that out. Sarah says, American speaking loud? No way! I just guessed that you shouted that bit. Do they still have the outdoor urinals? I think they do, but they're not so popular. I found one outdoor urinal in the Luxembourg Gardens that looked like it was about 500 years old. It was stone. It was pretty unusual. One question from Mary Ellen. Are you going to sell the movie rights to your book? I'll tell you something I've learned that I'd like to do a blog post or a podcast episode about. When you self-publish a book, it's really hard to convince anyone to do anything with it. It's really hard because when they do it the traditional way, you've got Penguin or whatever saying, they, like for a movie rights or whatever, they go, hey, we already give this the seal of approval. Whereas I don't get any seal of approvals from anyone except book sales. And I guess that they look at it and they go, okay, you sold 1,000 copies. Anyone with a big following could sell 1,000 copies. It could still be a rubbish book. And then they might look on Goodreads and go, okay, you have 100 5-star reviews. That just means you have 100 fans. That doesn't mean anything. So for me to get anyone, including small bookshops in Paris, let alone movie rights, to agree is actually really, really hard. And it can be quite disheartening. So that's why I'm going if any of you guys have seen Dolomite on Netflix, or if you know the story of the actual Dolomite with Eddie Murphy in, I'm doing that approach where I'm talking to 44 people in Chicago rather than talking to a small bookshop in the hopes that I can spread the word and make things happen that way. But I think it'd be fun. One of these chats I did, everyone in the comment field was saying it was actually during one of the pub quizzes I hosted. They were saying who they thought the actors should be that would play me and Lena. And the one that was the most sort of resoundingly agreed upon was people thought I should be Adrian Brody, and they thought she should be Keira Knightley, I think. I don't know. That's up to you guys to agree or disagree with, but there you go. It'd be pretty funny if it ever did. And if it was those two in it, I wouldn't care anything about it. I'd let them do whatever they wanted. The Midnight Walk in Hemingway has been linked by Amy. Thank you very much. And by Carol. Thanks, guys. But you still wrote a book. No one can take that accomplishment away, says Sarah, and you're exactly right. And that's why I'm happy to do it my way, because that was the way I did the book. And I think it's kind of fun. And that's the way I did the podcast too, by the way. I got a review in the other day that said, thanks for all you and your producer have done. But the truth is, the producer left after about 20 episodes. So the last 180 have been all edited and put out there and promoted by me. So it really is a one-man show. And that's also why you guys buying the book helps, because that turns out to be a sort of an income for me. The other way, if I could be so bold as to promote it, and I know some of you guys here are already signed up on this, the way that I turned, and I've mentioned in the book, but the way that I turned the podcast from being a hobby with very few listeners into a career is through a website called patreon.com. And I linked it there. And the people who really like the show, and I think there are a few of them here. Anyone wave to me? I already know Jim and Cindy are. Amy's waving? Yeah. So this Patreon is like a magazine subscription. You can sign up for $5 a month or $10 a month or $1,000 a month. I'm just kidding, you can't. But that's the way I made a career and a salary out of it, is lots of people sign up. You get extra content, guides to Paris, the audiobook for free. You get walks around Paris for free. And the people who are members love it. And believe me, that's what they say. So check it. Viviana is the newest patch. Where is Viviana? I can't see you. Are you on the second page? Maybe you don't have your video on. Maybe I just can't see you. But yeah, there's new people signing up all the time, and it's really wonderful because that's how I survive. So if you like these kind of content, I'm going to start doing a really cool thing on Zoom. In fact, I just came up with the idea and started sharing it yesterday. I'm going to record podcast episodes just like this. So let's say I was interviewing someone like Mary Ellen. We'd do it as a podcast, and we'd be talking to each other, and I'd be recording it. And then I'd say, okay, well, thanks for joining me on the show. Everyone at home listening to the podcast, I'm going to continue the conversation on Zoom with the Patreon supporters. Everyone listening at home, thanks for joining. And then I go, so Mary Ellen and everybody, let's chat. And then everyone's going to get a chance to talk to these cool guests I have from around Paris, like the mayor of Montmartre. I think it's going to be a good way to bring people closer together. So that's something to look forward to for you, Viviana. But any more questions, guys? I realize I've been talking nonstop for 45 minutes. I'm going to have a sip of my champagne and see if any questions come in. Or complaints. And I'll even have a chip.
Now, I think Aimee, who is our director, excuse me for a second, Aimee, who's our director of cultural programs, you've been asking quite a few questions. Were there a few others that you had received that you wanted to ask, Aimee?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. No, it's been going well on the chat line. I've been feeding a bit of my curiosity there. I really enjoyed that. Sorry about all the comments.
I love it.
So we can see, anybody has urgent question before we wrap up this event with Oliver? I mean, we're so glad to have you with us, Oliver. And I hear that you might come and study French online with us. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, it could be quite fun. Haven't you written a book, Amy, as well?
I did a little while back. It's not the easiest thing to do. So chapeau, as they say in French, to you.
Merci à vous.
But actually, I had one last question to you, because I was wondering, I know your background is in news. You came as a journalist. I don't know if it was for the written press, the radio, or TV. But do you find your background help you with deadlines? Because my problem is my book is never finished. But I see that you get a book out because of the podcast. So there's a really interesting question there for me as a writer, is like, how do you get to the publishing point so quickly? Yeah. I mean, it's awesome.
Good question. Thank you. I thought it's funny that you say that, because I thought about this the other day. I've been asked this a lot, and I never had a good answer until yesterday. Besides the obvious, which is learning what's important and getting the important bit in the right place, which in news is crucial. Like the headline is the hardest bit to write, you know? So that is telling a story or writing a memoir. You don't want to get into the extraneous detail. In a news story, you get straight to it. Here, you can be a bit more colorful and be funny and stuff like that. But the deadline, so I work for online news, and the turnaround we had was so quick. Like it could be an hour, especially with breaking news. And I wrote about it a lot in the book. There was a lot of breaking news when I was here, like the terror attacks, the tragic terror attacks, plural, many. Like, in fact, there was one on this day 3 or 4 years ago in Nice that you guys maybe remember. So when those kind of things happen, for example, if that were to happen right now, we'd have to have a story up on the site ready to go with a picture and a headline and more to follow within 2 seconds. And then everyone would be sharing and reading it, and we'd just be updating it. And even on a normal day, if, I don't know, someone died or something, you have to have that story within an hour. So when I do podcast editing, blog posts, or books, I know how to work real quick. And so there are a lot of people who say, sounds like I'm bragging here, but this is true. People say that I work really hard. I think I do, but I think more that I work really fast and thoroughly, you know? So I think it helped me write the book and get it out because I'm used to being quick and meeting deadlines. And it's a blessing because it also means I'm impatient. And the editor of my book said, because the story finishes in October last year. And a normal memoir to get it published the traditional way, it probably wouldn't be out until October next year because they take so long. And my editor said to me, it's amazing to have a book finish in October and published in, I think it was March or something like that, because it was so quick. So it's a blessing. I love being able to work fast. And I don't know how you could learn it as a fellow writer, Amy, but if you can figure it out, it'll change your life. But it means, I don't know.
Well, look at my Emmys, but they're not mine. They're my husband, who's a journalist too, isn't he? So I try to imitate that pace, but I can't. Anyway, I think we're straying a little off course from Paris into the writing craft. I see that a lot of people are saying chin chin, bravo, merci, au revoir, à bientôt. And I personally want to thank Oliver to be with us on the 14th of July. It's a real treat to have a little glimpse at Paris and what's going on there. We're big fans, Oliver, so just keep going. We'll read you, we'll listen to you. You're one of my favorite Instagram posts with another guy from British Columbia who travels around the coast of British Columbia for two different landscapes. Many thanks to Mary Ellen. Also, support us, please, if you can. These are tough times, and we really enjoy being able to offer a program for free. We wish you all a very nice 14 de juillet. Et à bientôt. Au revoir.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.